I'm delighted to say we're joined for this event's keynote interview by Henrik Hololei, who's Director General Mobility and Transport at the European Commission. And from the beginning of his career in his native Estonia, Henrik's been involved in European affairs for well over 2 decades. And aside from having been a Minister of Economic Affairs in Estonia, he also headed the Office for European Integration there and represented Estonia at various EU levels before joining the Commission, where he's held a number of senior roles, assuming his current position in October 2015. And given that background, he's well placed to talk about the challenges, perhaps also the opportunities of travel and transport in the EU today, where we are, where we want to get back to, and what the future might look like. So, Henrik, first of all, you're very welcome and many thanks for joining our session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
I mean, let's talk first about perhaps the impact of COVID-19 on the transport sector and related economic sectors. We're coming particularly from the aviation and cruise and ferry and airline retail side of the business. But perhaps you can just quantify the broader impact and maybe talk a little bit about some of the lessons we've learned and how we might look to build resilience back into the travel ecosystem in our region.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it is a very specific crisis. I mean, and I just want to make a small walk down the memory lane in terms of the fact that 10 years ago, a bit more than 10 years ago, we experienced the financial economic crisis. And what was the difference? The difference was that the economy and the society was actually hit across the board. There were very few sectors who then were not impacted, and in that sense, even the drop was quite significant. It was far more, I would say, leveling across the different economic sectors. Now we have had the drop in the economic output, which has been steepest since the Second World War. But we have only actually maybe 1/3 of the sectors which are affected, who have actually contributed to this drop or who have been really hit extremely hard, while half of the sectors are doing very well and 1/3 is doing better than ever before. So it is a very different crisis. Unfortunately, transport, tourism, travel have been among those hit hardest. The other thing which is also very difficult to accept is that these sectors did nothing wrong. They are hit hard because of the political decisions which were made by various governments in Europe and in the world more generally, which actually has wiped off their possibilities to do business over the last 1.5 years. And the recovery is also going to be slow. Even though after the slow start, I'm sure it will take off because people are fed up. People want to get back to traveling. People want to experience. People want to get the emotions they have been deprived of over the last 1.5 years. The hit to the sectors have been, as I say, significant. If you take, for example, aviation, we have lost 80% of the passengers. And probably at peak, it was close to 100%, 97%, I think, at the peak last year when everything was shut down in Europe. This year, until now, it's been largely 80%, maybe now showing a little bit less. When we look at the flights, it's in the European airspace, it's about 65%, which is the loss. This year, first 5 months, 65% constant, no improvement whatsoever. And when you ask, well, 65% loss, so 35% flights took place. That's quite a lot. But then don't forget that these flights are cargo flights, business jets, and also many of the empty flights which are needed in order to maintain the certificates for the pilots and for the aircrafts. So that is just to show the magnitude. But I talked about the aviation. I even leave aside the financial impact, which we are calculating really in billions and billions. I mean, for example, in Europe, also last year, 1.7 billion passengers failed to fly. And I think gives also the magnitude. But the same has been in rail, where you had also about a loss of 26 billion revenues and also a major drop in passengers. in urban transport, and ferry industry has been basically, cruise industry basically wiped out with very, very few cruise ships across the world. So this is an unprecedented impact. Now, as I said, there is also definitely, there are more than green shoots. I mean, now, when we have the restart, which is going to be gradual, nevertheless, the demand will be high. Demand will be high because people have also quite a lot of disposable income. Spending during the crisis has been smaller than usual. So people really are happy, I would say, to put their money also in acquiring new emotions and traveling. So this is definitely good news. The question is, when are we going to get there? And of course, it will definitely take another year when we can talk about something which would be resembling the pre-crisis levels in terms of people's mobility. How to build stronger resilience for the future? It's a big challenge, and I think that the crisis has shown also many of the deficiencies what we have, and I think we need stronger balance sheets. And I think this is a good example, because when we look at the banks from the financial crisis, there were no banks affected now. Why? Because there was a much stronger, the banks emerged stronger, the balance sheets are stronger. We also hope that maybe that would be also through consolidation and also being more prudent for the transport industry, hopefully also for the travel industry. But of course, it takes time to accumulate. But I think that the importance of reserves is very clear. You look at the airlines; those who had significant cash reserves have done very well even during the crisis, and their value hasn't really dropped. While those airlines who had big trouble now with the state aid, of course, are in a bit of a different position. And I think that what we also need to learn is that we need pan-European solutions. For Europe, the biggest problem has been the lack of pan-European solutions, this patchwork, national measures. You know, a few weeks ago, when you want to travel with children in Europe, you had 15 different regimes. And I'm counting like 30 countries, also the EEA countries. 15 different regimes in 30 countries. This is madness. How can Europe, which is being championing the free movement of people and pan-European solutions, not being able to do better here? And I think this is a big learn from the crisis, that we need Europe to pull itself together. We don't need the national governments pull themselves into different directions, which is bad for everyone. We also need to trust more, because why are certain governments not trusting their partners and their medical systems by putting up all kinds of barriers, while they trust them in most other areas? Again, I think the question is also, do European member states trust each other when they are the member states? And I think that they should. I understand sometimes there are some national specificities, but all in all, we need to tackle these things together much more. And I think that there is hopefully an opportunity to show that we have learned something next time. But I'm still there to be persuaded that that's the case.
Yeah, I'm just jumping ahead to one question I was going to ask you later, but really you've introduced it there, is that question of free movement among the member states and how that can be restored as fully as possible, as soon as possible, especially when the states exercise such discretion over how and when they open their own borders. So how do we get there? And then I suppose related to that, you know, the role of the digital COVID certificate in rebuilding travel, how do we ensure it's used consistently, because those approaches to travel are really very different in different locations?
No, I mean, here you're absolutely right. I mean, the digital certificates can make a big difference, but they are not going to be the panacea. They are not going to give us what actually we want. What I'm afraid of is that there is maybe too much over-promising concerning this digital certificate, and the expectations are too high. There needs to be expectation management. I already said nothing is going to happen overnight. From the first, look what we have. From the 1st of July, all member states have to have these digital certificates. But there is going to be 6 weeks phasing in period, which actually means that only 12th of August they will become obligatory for all member states in Europe. The second thing is that despite of what the Commission put on the table, despite of what the European Parliament was asking for, the member states decided that they should have the ultimate right in the end to put up additional barriers if they think that it is justified from the point of view of public health. The good thing is that there are certain criteria, but also the member states have the possibility to ignore these criteria. So if Finland, for example, decides that, look, I just don't feel like letting the Estonians in, they can do it because they have the right to do it. And there is no way that we can stop them doing that. So this is unfortunate that despite of this certificate, we still are not entirely sure that everybody is going to accept the fact that those who are fully vaccinated, those who have the negative PCR test, and those who have the antigens in their body recovering from the COVID, that these people should be allowed in without any hassle, without any restrictions, without any quarantines. But at least it's a good attempt. But this attempt should have been there a long time ago. I mean, we have done that also in the aviation. Last year in May, we adopted the aviation health safety protocol. Actually, this was helping a lot last summer when the restrictions were loosened, the aviation to take off and at least give some connectivity and possibility to travel in Europe, because these were the health kind of rules which were considered sufficient and also to ensure and to guarantee that aviation and flying is safe from the health perspective. Then we had the same in December. We updated them with the new information, and you know what happened was that not a single member state actually was following them, because they thought, well, aviation, well, maybe it's safe, but we don't care, and that was very unfortunate. And now, of course, the same with the digital certificates. I think we need to accept that we have in Europe high level of medical certainty. And I think that the main thing is that we can trust each other. What is the priority if I look also? The main priority is to restore the travel, aviation, movement intra-European. And these digital certificates are first and foremost intra-European. There is no doubt that you have to prioritize, and this is where the focus for this summer will be. But at the same time, if we look outside Europe, there are also destinations with whom, well, first of all, which are extremely important for us, and Europe is important for them. United States is a good example. The transatlantic travel is one of the key travel corridors that we have in Europe. But also we have countries, let's say in Asia, which are known destinations and who also have systems that we can rely upon, be it Singapore, be it Japan, be it Korea, for example. And I think that in these cases, there is the possibility for the for agreeing the equivalence through the adequacy decision. And I also hope that these adequacy decisions could be made so that at least we will also be able to restore some, I would say, long-haul travel. And then, of course, we have the immediate neighbors, and hopefully also that would be part of those solutions that we are looking for, and that we can have the adequacy decisions. But that remains to be seen. It's clear that for travel, for tourism, many of the close destinations are important. Turkey, of course, the best example. And let's hope that that there we would also have some positive progress. But bottom line is also that I would say never again. Europe was created in order to facilitate and support the free movement of people within Europe. I think it's time to go back to the roots and make sure that in the future we would never be facing such kind of limitation of movement again. And again, as we spoke earlier, let's hope that we have learned something and that certain core values will not be there for sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that restart of travel and tourism, of course, our industry on one hand, but individuals and travellers need that certainty. And so without a unified and coordinated system that's also communicated well in place, we can't do that. So I guess the other related question is, how do we restore customer confidence in travel once more after lockdown, and have governments, individual governments, and even also the EU institutions communicated well enough, consistently enough on this, and what should be the core 1 or 2 or 3 messages about travel to those consumers today?
No, I mean, again, I would say that it's absolutely correct to say that even when we have the certificates, even when we have the possibilities to move around, and we have also the means to do that, there is still the issue about the trust and confidence of the customer, trust and confidence of the traveler. And I mean, if I take aviation, which plays a key role also in connecting people, then the success of aviation, in addition to opening up the market in Europe 29 years ago, which made something which was a privilege for a few to a commodity which everybody can enjoy, was that it was safe. And safety in transport is always the #1 priority. We take a train, we take a plane because we know it's safe. Secondly, and that was, I think, the aftermath of the September 11, we also want to make sure that traveling is secure. And I think it has been demonstrated, even though civil aviation continues to be one of the key targets for terrorism, these acts are still very rare because we have a very, very robust system of security in place. It's safe and secure. So what is in the future? I think the third element in the future, at least in the next years to come, is health safety. It's also safe from the point of view of health, because there are protocols. These protocols need to be followed, and the industry follows these protocols. It's the same with aviation. It's the same when it comes to ferries. It's the same when it comes to train. Certain protocols give us also the certainty, and health safety aspects are the kind of aspects which are, I think, central in giving people back the trust and confidence. It's also important that the travel operators, the aviation industry, the travel industry more generally, they all, rail industry, ferry industry, cruise industry, they all stress that. And when turning to the customer, highlight the fact that it's also safe to use them from the health safety perspective. I think this is one of the important additional elements that people need to hear, knowing also that there is a very strong substance in it. And I think that helps to restore the confidence and trust.
Yeah, just to look at the overall each of the markets in turn, clearly there's probably a different speed coming back to rail, for example, and a lot of domestic markets is back not at what it was, but it's close. Then there's also the cruise and ferry business, which has its own challenges, cruise certainly, and ferry to a different extent, and then air as well. How do you see the trajectory of recovery in each of those coming over the next few months? And are you confident, say, by start of next year, we'll be getting somewhere close to what the kind of levels we were at before, or really will it take much longer? A lot of the forecasts, of course, are putting air travel certainly at 4 to 5 years away in terms of back to 2019 levels.
I think it is. It's very difficult to predict, because I don't think we have all the parameters. I think that we have seen throughout the crisis that the prediction had to be adjusted constantly. I think that first everybody hoped that things will get back, well, if not normal, but it will be close to that already last summer, then in the autumn. But it has been delayed constantly. Now, of course, with the high number of people being vaccinated and the vaccinations actually going pretty well, I think that there is a new moment also to do the forecasting. Aviation is a good example. I was always a little bit more optimistic, perhaps, than the industry itself. Well, now we talk about 2024, even 25 to get to the pre-COVID levels, and that is also what the Eurocontrol travel traffic forecast is for the moment. But at the same time, I was very positively surprised when 2 weeks ago IATA came out with their forecast, which actually saw that already in 2023 globally we would be able to get to 105% of the 2019 levels. So as said, the fourchette is quite large, and there is also the degree of optimism. The question is, if now we are not going to get any new shocks, if the vaccinations continue in the pace, if it all opens up, it is possible that it can be faster than anticipated, but at least let's not jump the gun yet. Rail, it will be the same thing. Probably the recovery is going to take longer time. Public transport, for example, which also has suffered a lot. Some would say that it would never come back to the 2019 levels, or at least not in the near future, because people are more reluctant to take public transport and want to go for the private or personal transportation means, which have been actually flourishing and mushrooming during this pandemic in the urban context. So I think that there are too many open parameters. I've always thought that in the end people will go back to the habits. People haven't changed, even though this pandemic has been huge and it has affected us immensely. Deep down, people haven't changed. They still want to do the same things. They still have their habits, and I think that would also help to restore. But there are also new business models, new solutions, and they would also make some adjustments, including the adjustments towards the recovery. And I think that the big question also is what about the cruise industry, which suffered heavily. I'm sure it will also recover, but the recovery probably is going to be somewhat more lengthier, and we have to see. I mean, forecasting is always an ungratifying task, and usually you get it wrong, and you very rarely get it right. And if you get it right, then everybody would say that, well, you were just lucky. So I think I'll stop here. My point is, I hope that all this recovery is going to be faster. But at the same time, as said, we have experienced so many times during the crisis, the moment where we think that, well, maybe now, but we have not been there yet. So too many undefined variables still exist, to be more precise at this moment.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning, strengthening of balance sheets, and I guess you were referring to stakeholders across the industry, and I just wonder how you think that whole structure of and I'm thinking particularly about air, but it also relates to certainly ferries as well. How the structure of the business will change post-crisis, and in the airline side, will we see that market dominance of low-cost carriers grow or emerge? You said you were talking to Ryanair earlier, but also among airports, I know there's certainly concern that ACI Europe has voiced it about those major hubs strengthening compared to regional airports, and regional airports being left behind, just given that airlines will reduce perhaps their focus, reduce capacity, focus on the profitable routes solely, at least in the short term. And I guess the question is really about business continuity within that sector, and ensuring that all of the regions within Europe are well served by connectivity, which of course seems to be in danger at the moment.
Yes, I think that you are right. I think that we are going to face certainly some of those challenges, and I believe that connectivity will definitely suffer to some extent. It's clear that we are not going to enjoy as many destinations and that we had before the crisis, at least not in the near future, and also the frequencies will be cut. We are going to have less planes flying per day between two destinations that we used to before. I think that's normal at this stage, but again, then it depends how quickly the demand restores. I believe also that tourism and private leisure travel will recover faster. It's clear that the business travel takes more time to recover, especially the transcontinental travel, which is considered to be the slowest in terms of recovery. And I think there is certainly a lot of truth in that. But meaning, taken from the point of view that the leisure travel and also the private traveling will recover faster. It should definitely favor the low-cost carriers, who have actually done quite well during the crisis because of the cash reserves they had accumulated. They have also been able to put quite significant orders for new aircrafts, which are also more fuel efficient, which are also more environmentally friendly. And I think that they have a good starting point, and they are ready to. And since they are also far more flexible, they are ready to start in a very short notice. So I do believe that Ryanair, Wizz Air, EasyJet will continue to serve the customers very well, and will continue to drive the connectivity in Europe. I also would see that there are certainly some exits where we have seen some, and there are also some consolidations, even though I don't think that the acquisitions will actually take place that significantly, because nobody has really got the cash that they can just use at this moment, and they need to get first themselves on the track, and after a few years the situation might also look differently. And I also do believe that those airlines which are concentrating on leisure travel will also recover quite fast, because we can already see that the leisure traveling is up. I mean, it was just quite interesting when now the UK has closed Portugal again, but when UK stopped the quarantines for Portugal, then the bookings and the number of passengers went really like skyrocketing in a very short period of time, and the low-cost carriers were able to serve them. Obviously, airlines have to look at their business models, and I mean the hub-spoke business model as such will be more difficult, especially when the transatlantic travel will take more time to recover. But and then, of course, again, I think you're right when you were talking about the regional airports. I think the regional airports are a bit in danger as well, because they fall a bit in the middle, and they also need the support. I hope that the governments and the local governments will do whatever is needed in order to maintain the viability of these airports, because they are needed for the connectivity. For me, the regional airports have been the ones who have been offering the connectivity. Of course, the question is also, how do you define a regional airport? Because, you know, in German terms, you can have, you know, Stuttgart can be a regional airport because it's not Frankfurt or Munich, but at the same time it serves one of the most wealthiest clientele in Germany. Or and then you have some more remote destinations in Spain, which are regional airports as such. So, you know, there is also a bit of a definition there. But I particularly, the smaller regional airports in more remote destinations are the ones which I think also require a focus from the government side.
Yeah, and you know, talking about helping them survive, and indeed the reference I think you made earlier to new business models, we certainly in our industry have that in mind when we look at the potential. For example, something that's been pushed by our industry association NTRG around calling for the EU to allow arrivals duty-free to have support that recovery by creating a new source of revenue and increasing competitiveness of EU aviation. Is that something that the Commission would support? I know obviously intra-EU duty-free has gone by the way 22 years ago, but in terms of an opportunity to sell to incoming passengers from outside the bloc, potentially from the UK, as an extra source of revenue, or potentially other indeed sources of revenue that would help the industry, what's your position on those?
Look, I very much appreciate and also acknowledge the work which has been done also by the NTRG, who has been in the center stage and in this particular crisis have been trying to think out of the box, and also what kind of new possibilities there are. And whenever I have been talking about aviation, I've always said that when we talk about the importance to maintain the aviation value network, that doesn't only mean we're talking about airlines or airports. We equally talk about the travel retail in the same context, as we talk about ground handling, as we talk about the air navigation service provision, which all actually together form one aviation ecosystem where the one supports the other. And of course, the travel retail has been one of those sectors, again, which has had heavy losses and also very heavily impacted. I also remember well the study that they commissioned and the good discussion I had with them when they were looking into the possibilities, and all arguments would need to be taken into the balance. But there is certainly good reasons for duty-free upon arrival, especially the fact that it could bring duty-free business back to the EU from the large hubs outside the EU, which is currently the case. But as I told ETRC when we discussed this, the key lies with creating an appetite for this in the member states. And why? Because the members, in order to do that, it requires a unanimity decision by the member states. And my advice in this respect would be to use towards member states the argument of recovery. Aviation and airports have suffered hugely, and duty-free upon arrival is one way to bring some cash back into the system. And if that is seen positively and by the governments, and if there is a willingness to move, then I wouldn't do anything else than welcome that. But as said, I think that it's challenging, but at the same time, in these times, you also need to think out of the box and see what's possible and what's not possible, and nothing should be considered impossible.
No, good to hear. I suppose just to broaden it out to that vision for a new world of travel and transport post-crisis, where does sustainability fit in? Where does smart mobility, which I think is a phrase that's been used a lot, fit into that picture for consumers, but also for business as well? And we're a business forum effectively here. And I suppose I'm also thinking of the background where we've seen in certain countries, and I include my own in this actually, where air transport has been demonized to some extent as well. And, we need to probably talk up the reputational benefits of our industry a bit more to the wider public overall. So I suppose, where do those things fit in, and how do you see the future?
No, I can only but agree that there is also a lot of fake news, false facts, and as you said, demonization in relation to the aviation industry. And the industry is also to extent blamed simply because they didn't pay enough attention to the aspects related to the sustainability. They started very late. Now they have understood it fully, and they have Destination 2050, some very serious steps that they want to do to make the sector sustainable. But they couldn't get their message across. And I can tell you, even in today's event, if we would ask people, what do you think is the carbon footprint of aviation in the overall total footprint of all the industries, I can tell you very few people would mention a one-digit figure. They would all believe it's two-digit. In fact, it's 2-3%. No, that people don't believe it. But also that's the view of perception, and that is also what the aviation industry is definitely suffering from today, because it's considered to be environmentally very heavy and not doing enough in order to become sustainable, which is not true. The industry is doing a lot, but it's definitely not doing enough, and it's true that it is far more to do. This is now the hardcore also, not only when we talk about transport, when we talk about aviation, when we talk about everything in Europe. We have the Green Deal. We want to be a carbon neutral continent 2050. For transport, it means 90% of cut in the emissions. And this is not easy. In transport, we also have assets which are used for a long time, heavy investments and so on. You just can't ignore them like that. Also, the innovation, technological change, it takes time. We know that the aircraft which is built today is also going to fly in 2035 or 2040. It's not going to disappear. And all this needs to be taken into account. But we have developed the strategy for smart and sustainable mobility. This is the way, the roadmap for the transport and mobility sector to decarbonize. This is how we want to get to 2050 with a minus 90%. And all transport modes have to do significantly more than they are doing today. At the same time, also, we are talking about innovation, we are talking about efficiencies, we are talking about modernization. But this only gives you some. At the same time, every small bit is needed. One big element here is, of course, the way how transport is powered. We clearly have to move away from the fossil fuels. It's easier in some parts of the transport. It's more difficult in the other. In aviation, you just cannot replace kerosene with anything else. Electrical aircrafts are a niche product which can perhaps in 15 years move around 50 people in a destination of 300 kilometers, but this is not mass travel, and other solutions are difficult to be achieved. I believe that we will have in 15 years liquid hydrogen powered aircraft, which Airbus has been now developing, but again, this will be still just the early days. So what we need to do is that we need to make sure that we would move from the current kerosene jet fuel to sustainable aviation fuels, where the blend of sustainable biofuels, synthetic fuels, and e-fuels will help the sector also to become much more sustainable. The same applies exactly with the maritime. The maritime sector also needs to significantly change the way it is powered. And as it happens, we are just in the next few weeks putting on the table the proposals for the Refuel Aviation and Refuel EU Maritime, which actually foresee the industrialization and uptake of the sustainable fuels. Today in aviation, 0.05% is sustainable aviation fuels. We want to move that into much higher levels, but it is also not going to be easy. I had today very good discussions also with the producers. I had also today discussions with the airlines. There is a lot of convergence. There is a lot of willingness to do things, and I think we need to be there to help and support that. The same goes with the smart mobility, smart solutions. People like smart solutions. People like easy ticketing, and this is, we are used to that in aviation. We are not used to that in rail. We are not used to that also in the urban context. This has to change. Through ticketing should be a norm. We also would like to see more efficiencies created, because if we want to have more sustainable transport, the more we use smart solutions, the more we can have efficiencies. The more we can have efficiencies, the more we can also increase the sustainability. It's a long story. We have very limited time, but I can tell you, sustainable and smart mobility is the license for this sector to grow in the future and to restore itself. And everything that the sector is doing has to take that into account and has to show that it is there to change.
Yeah, I guess within the industry, you probably have, I mean, clearly there's concerns, and I can even speak to that from a travel retail point of view. You know, climate action obviously is critical on the agenda, but, you know, investments in climate resilient transport assets and transitioning to a lower carbon future also drives cost for the industry. And I guess that question from people here will be, how do we balance those opposing forces of investment versus strengthening short term and trying to, you know, remain and increase our economic resilience, because that's a very difficult question in the short term for a lot of companies too.
I cannot agree more. For me, when we talk about aviation, I've said that there are three things that I would never trade off, and these are competition, connectivity, and affordability. And I think the affordability element is crucial. Now, when there are new proposals coming on the table, none of them is going to reduce costs. They are all there actually to increase costs. I think it is fair to say that the basics, the overall costs are going to be higher in the future, and that is part of this drive towards the carbon neutral continent. And surely there will be mitigation measures. Surely not everything will be passed on to the consumer, but there will be also consequences for the consumer. There will be consequences to the businesses. The thing is that what is very important is that this all is a evolutionary process, which also takes into account the different stages that one has to achieve. Because I know those who want to do the revolution. It's very easy, but it is not going to change. It is just going to break everything, and it is actually depriving us from the possibilities. We also don't want to live in Europe where flying again becomes the commodity for the rich, or owning a private car is something which today is again possible for everyone, something which is not a normal sort of thing to have, and that means that there are costs, and the question is also for the governments to find ways how to mitigate it. We all want to have a more sustainable environment around us. We want to live in a environment where there is a better air quality and less emissions. the question is also how much are we ready to pay for it, and how much is the bearability that the governments can actually make the consumer to pay, and how much can be also done by the industry, because this is not something that the industry can bear alone, which many think. It is something where actually the whole society has to contribute to. There will be difficult discussions ahead, there is no doubt, and I think that it is very important to realize that that this trend is irreversible. But with this trend, there will be also many challenges that we are going to face.
Yeah, just a brief follow up on the question you spoke about earlier about security of travel, and we obviously know the story recently about the forcing down of a Ryanair passenger flight in Belarus and the issues that that's raising. Do you see any implications for the travel of European flights over third countries in future, and how can and should the EU respond to threats from Russia in particular about bypassing Belarus or even its own airspace in future?
Look, I mean, we'd have to take it very seriously, because the safety and security of our passengers is our most highest priority. And that's why we also work very closely with the member states and with the member states intelligence communities in order to define also the conflict zones, in order to make sure that we take the action when we see that certain airspace, for example, becomes potentially a threat to safety or security. Unfortunately, there have been the cases over the last years. I mean, we all know the Malaysian plane which was shot down by the Russian rebels, and we also know that the Ukrainian plane which was shot down by the military of Iran only 2 years, well, less than 2 years ago. So what I'm saying is that we usually are able to anticipate that, and in this case what happened in Belarusian airspace is unforgivable. The state hijacking of a aircraft which was flying between two EU destinations is unheard of and unprecedented. But it's not only a kind of an incident which we can see that it was a one-off and that was initiated by the regime. What we also saw was that air traffic control, which has a very intimate relationship with the aircraft and its pilots, and is there always to help, actually did not fulfill its purpose. It was given false information to the pilots, and of course, by doing that, we have justified questions about the safety of flying in the Belarusian airspace. That's why also the European Aviation Safety Agency issued the safety directive to prohibit EU airlines flying. And now also the EU member states decided as part of the sanctions to prohibit flying in Belarusian airspace. But this is not a sanction only. This was done based on our safety assessment and the fact that can we guarantee that EU airlines which are flying through the Belarusian airspace will be served by the air traffic control in a way which guarantees 100% safety. And we definitely were not in agreement with that, or we definitely did not think so. But when it comes to other potential territories, I wouldn't worry too much, and civil aviation is not used for political retaliation normally. We had one very unfortunate case not long ago where for many years the Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain and UAE were blockading Qatar, and that was totally unjustified. In Belarusian case, I mean, we have two things. We have the safety aspect, and we also have the fact that in this case aviation was used. So the countermeasures which also concern aviation are justified. And I would say that we continue, of course, monitoring the evolvement of situation globally. And if there are any areas where we see that there are dangers where the safety and security can be compromised, then also our aviation safety agency, together with the member states, will step in, and I can ensure that to all people who fly, and to say that flying an EU aircraft is definitely safe and secure.
Good. A final question, Henrik, before you leave us. How much do you think the world of travel for European consumers will change in the short, medium and longer term? And I guess how should sectors like ours, related sectors, travel dependent sectors like duty free and travel retail be preparing for, a new world, a new kind of travel economy?
Mm-hmm. Yes, again, we are coming to the wonderful world of forecasting and trying to anticipate what's going to happen in a situation where the parameters are not yet defined. And I think it's very difficult to see exactly how the situation will evolve in Europe and internationally. And of course, I think we covered throughout our discussion quite a lot of that. I mean, my prediction is really that we will see the restoration of intra-European travel faster. We are going to see much less when it comes to the intercontinental travel, but it will also eventually come back. And what we also see today is that everybody can feel that people do want to travel. And of course, there will be also complexities in relation to travel in the next months to come. Like with the COVID certificate, when more people are going to travel and we don't have a good flow systems in place, it will also mean that we could see congestion, we can see bottlenecks, but so that would take away a bit of the pleasurable travel experience. But I'm sure that in the medium term, this all will come back. And I also do believe that that demand is there, and whenever there is a possibility to fly, then we can see that this demand is also definitely be matched with the supply. And I do believe that also as your sector, you should continue to do what has always been your strength. Keep improving the way you present your products, keep improving the passenger experience, and keep people happy. And I think that that's the best guarantee also for the travel to restore and for people to have again the opportunity to obtain memories, emotions, and also go around and see different places and meet interesting people. I think these are the things that nobody will take away from the inside of the person, and something that always keeps on driving us to hop on a plane, train, helicopter, or a ferry, and enjoy nice moments that you can take with you for your life.
Very good. Well, that's a positive note on which to close. We want to create some positive memories as well for our consumers going forward as well. So I'd like to just say many thanks, Henrik Hololei, for joining us today, and to wish you well in the work you're doing for the recovery of the EU travel and transport system. Thanks again for your time. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. It's been really a pleasure having this opportunity, and I wish you all the best. And like they say nowadays, stay well and stay healthy.
Thank you.